Hi, I'm Dr. Chandresh. I'm the consultant psychiatrist here at ANC Gachibowli. Today I'll be answering a pretty commonly asked question: what is depression and why does it occur? So today I'll walk you through some of the theories of depression that we have. The first one has to do with hormones. So depression is considered to be a state where there is an increase in corticosteroids in the body. This has been seen in both humans as well as animals. So there is something called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary and adrenal axis, which is supposed to keep in check the corticosteroid levels. And in depression, there is a dysregulation of this axis. Basically, there is an uncontrolled or unchecked increase in corticosteroid levels, and the feedback inhibition that is supposed to occur is not occurring in depression. Apart from corticosteroids, the second hormone of interest is the thyroid hormones. It is seen that in up to 5 to 10% of people presenting with depression, there may be a hypothyroid state underneath. And usually, treatment of this hypothyroid state leads to remission of symptoms of depression. The next theory is of inflammation. What is seen is people who are suffering from autoimmune disorders, or let's say if you have certain antibodies against certain receptors in the brain, you could have a wide range of symptoms of importance to psychiatry, and mood disorders are one of them. And as continuation of the previous theory that I mentioned, an increase in corticosteroid levels obviously would have an impact on the inflammatory conditions in the body. And so you can have a vicious cycle of increased corticosteroid levels impacting an inflammatory state again leading to a worsening of depression, and then a depressive state also increasing the corticosteroid levels. And the next theory is of chronic stress. This is something that we often get asked: does chronic stress or any sort of stress have any association with depression? To answer this, there is an animal model for this phenomenon. It's something called the chronic unpredictable stress model. In this chronic unpredictable stress model, a lab animal such as a lab rat or a lab mouse would be subjected to a stress from which it cannot really escape, no matter how much effort it puts to escape that stressful situation. And what this lab animal eventually figures out or believes is that any amount of effort put in to escape from the situation will be fruitless. And so it stops putting any effort to escape from the situation. And so in these animals subjected to chronic unpredictable stress, you would also find similar symptoms of depression as you would see in humans. And going by this theory in lab animals, it is also thought that any history of chronic unpredictable stress in your life may increase just the chances of you becoming depressed later on, but cannot be completely said to be the cause of this. Just like all the other theories that I'm going to be talking about, each of them contributes a little amount to increasing the risk of depression. So now to talk about genetics and depression, another frequently asked question: what are the chances that somebody that I know in the family has depression? What are the chances that I would get depression? So with depression, what is known is, yes, there is an increase in the risk that if one person has depression, the chance of the immediate family, that is the first degree relatives, the chances of them having depression doubles. But that doesn't mean genes control everything. There is also a gene and an environment interaction. Let's say even in identical twins, if one person has depression, though the other twin also has an increased chance of getting depression now, but it doesn't mean that they will. There is a significant contribution of the environment which interacts with this genetic predisposition to produce depression. So coming to the biological basis for depression in the brain. So depression is not just feeling low and suicidal. Depression involves feeling low, feeling like life is not worth living, feeling that there's a change in appetite, maybe you don't want to eat as much or you're eating too much, changes in your sleep patterns, either sleeping too less or sleeping too much, feeling excess of guilt for things you don't feel guilty about normally, losing interest in things you used to find pleasurable. All of this means multiple regions of the brain are being affected. It's not just a single part in the brain which has a dysfunction. To simplify how these different symptoms are being produced, right, in the brain, let's say you have a part of your brain which predominantly deals with emotional processing. It's called your limbic region. And emotions being generated here are usually tempered or controlled by your higher brain centers in the prefrontal cortex. So in depression, there is an excess of activity in these emotional processing areas such as the amygdala, and there's a decrease in activity in these prefrontal regions. So finally, coming to the chemicals in the brain which are predominantly dysregulated during depression, there are 3 of them: serotonin, norepinephrine and dopamine. And the medication that we give for people with depression usually involves trying to regulate these three different neurotransmitters. For the vast majority of patients, we would start them on a class of drugs called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So examples of these drugs would be something like fluoxetine or escitalopram. You might have heard of these. And usually they take a few weeks to see full effect. To give you an example from computers, right? So all the theories that I've told you right now mostly deal with the hardware, the biology side of things. I will now touch upon the software theories of depression, which is the cognitive theory. So this cognitive theory of depression posits that people with depression tend to have three major negative thought patterns. Negative thoughts about the self, negative thoughts about their environment, and negative thoughts about the future. And so these major negative thought patterns are said to increase the negative emotions and negative behaviors associated with depression.